take care of your needs and what you need in order to become what you want to become. Give yourself the training and the love and the nutrition and everything that you need to grow into what you want to be. It's okay that you're not it right now, because there's time to get there, but just lay the foundations first.
So I'm really excited for this New South Wales Through Their Eyes, because we're doing a feature of amazing young women, and obviously we're supported by New South Wales women here, and so I'm excited to welcome Julia, who is a Harvey Norman 2020 Premier's Award finalist, which is very exciting, and your focus was on around financial literacy, which we've just discussed that I'm personally excited to learn a bit about this and hoping that I'm going to learn today. But let's start with you telling us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, thanks, Zoe. So I'm Julia, I'm 23, grew up in Sydney and moved to Newcastle for uni. And my advocacy work actually started at around the age of 14 when I was horrifically bullied online. And once I got over the immediate trauma of that, I decided I didn't want that to happen to any other, in particular, young women. So I actually wrote a book, a self-help book for young women who are experiencing cyberbullying. From that book, it evolved into public speaking, research, just talking with whoever I can, whoever would listen, really. And that evolved into a passion for helping young people, and something that I noticed as I graduated high school, moved out of home, went to uni, was my own lack of financial literacy skills, and it's not an uncommon story. And I don't think we can pin it on anyone failing. It's not the school system, it's not parents, it's an entire societal issue where financial literacy is so taboo. And that's something that I'm extremely passionate about solving and helping to improve.
Now, you're going to take me down a rabbit hole, and I warned you that can easily go off script in this. But there's two things in that I do really want to unpack. The financial literacy, absolutely, in terms of why you think it's so important and what are some of the key messages around that. But I do want to just quickly touch on the fact that you talked then just about being bullied, but that you came it. You know, that's kind of something that we're dealing with a lot right now in the world that we're in. Can you, if you're okay with it, talk a bit about how you did overcome that and what kind of tools and steps you took to do that? Because obviously it led you to an amazing journey in doing so.
Absolutely. Going through that cyberbullying experience was incredibly isolating, because the bullying got to me in the safety of my own home, in my bedroom. And I was fortunate to have family around me that picked me up and held me as I cried. But what actually helped me to overcome it was not looking inward, but looking outward and thinking, I wouldn't want my best friend to experience this, my little cousins as they come through school, or anyone. I started to go through lists of people in my head that I thought, I cannot let this happen. So I find that with most adversity, that if you can actually turn it away from yourself, it's really easy to give up on yourself, unfortunately. If you're fighting for yourself, sometimes you think, oh, maybe I'm not worth it. But if you're fighting for everyone else that you care about, that's what gets you out of bed every morning, and that's going to just keep you going. So if you can find a way to turn that experience into something positive for others, I think that's the best way to overcome that type of challenge and tragedy, really, and trauma.
Do you see there being a link in terms of that kind of self-confidence and bullying and the kind of things that can happen in your younger years to things like financial literacy and that kind of confidence around finance?
Absolutely. So it's that point of not thinking that you're worth it. When your self-esteem is so low, if you don't have money in the bank to spend on making your life what you want it to be, you're not inclined to work hard or work smart, I like to say as well, to actually improve your life, because you think, I'm only worth this money that's in my bank account. Why should I aim higher? Why should I ask for a pay rise? Why should I get a job, at school? I'm just going to sit in my little box because that's what people have told me that I should do. So I absolutely think there's an intrinsic link that once self-esteem and that self-efficacy is built, then the skills on top of that just will make financial literacy flourish.
There's so many things in that in terms of talking about being in your own little box, not asking for things like pay rises. I mean, we here work with 0 to 24, so we're talking about, kind of 16-year-olds who might get their first job. What's something that you would say to people in terms of that job market and not being feeling like you have to be in that box and fighting for things that is, equity and the things that you deserve. How do you think people can do that when they are 16 or 17?
My one lesson throughout working, I did have a job at 16, 17, and the one thing that I realised very quickly is that if you don't look out for yourself, no one else is actually going to do it for you. If I want to know how much I'm getting paid in relation to my peers, who else is going to ask that question except for myself? If I want to know whether my wage is fair, I need to be the one to do that research. There are so many resources online about fair work, about minimum wage, about super. Sometimes people aren't getting super when they should be, and looking into that sort of thing. So it's about taking ownership and not going, the company or the owner is paying me and they're paying me, I guess, what's fair. Maybe they are paying you what's fair, but it's worth you actually pursuing that and getting that answer definitively. Just do the research, start asking the questions, and find safe people to ask those questions of, people that you can trust and that care about you, and then you can start to build your confidence that way.
And the things that you're talking about now, I know that you had a high school program that you were involved in that you helped design, and this is obviously what's leading us towards the Premier's Award and things like that. So are they the kinds of lessons that were involved in that program? Can you talk a bit more about the high school program that you designed?
Absolutely. The financial literacy program tried to approach things a little bit differently, and rather than say, this is what a debit card is, this is what a credit card is, while all of those basic lessons are really important, it actually starts with the student. So if you and I, Zoe, walked into a store right now with $100 in hand, both of us would treat that extremely differently based on our circumstances. So how someone should advise both of us as individuals to treat that $100 should, in turn, be different. So I might be someone that loves to save, so I only want to spend 20% of that $100 and will make a $20 purchase, whereas someone else might see the $100 as an investment and might buy that bigger purchase. So the financial literacy program started with a bit of a quiz. What's your money mindset? Are you inclined to get money and spend it in the next 30 seconds? Are you a bit of a hoarder with your money? And then from there, we actually were able to tailor the lesson to the students so that it resonated and so that the advice didn't fall on deaf ears, because a person that loves to spend, you can say to them as much as you like, you should be saving 30% of your income. They're not going to do that. So how can we turn this on our head and look for strategies that are going to work for the specific student?
I think from the conversation we had before, you probably understand that I'm a spender and spend it immediately, but there's some learning around that. And why do you think it's so important to start having conversations around financial literacy, especially with women younger?
It goes back to confidence, and it goes back to, if I'm told all throughout my childhood that money doesn't matter, or equally, nothing about money is discussed at all, how am I supposed to flourish into someone who can manage my money, invest it wisely? And I'm not talking about stocks and bonds, I'm talking about investing it in the life that I want to lead. How am I going to prioritize that in my life? It's about those really early conversations to take the fear away from money. I think that a lot of people, there's a classic money mindset of being very afraid of money. And if a bill comes in, pay it straight away, don't look at it again, or put a bill in the bottom drawer because you don't want to have to confront that. Both can be potentially dangerous. And if we haven't had the conversation to debunk the fear around money and realize that money can actually be well within our control if we have the right toolkit. If we don't do that all throughout in baby steps, then how can someone expect to be in their, well into their established career and all of a sudden pick up these skills? It doesn't happen overnight. So building a foundation really early on is really the way we're going to make this beautiful platform. And I think it's especially important for women because traditionally men have been the caretakers of money, and there's nothing wrong with that and how it's evolved. But what we need to realise now is women's role and their ambition in their careers has gone like this, but their money mindset has only come this far. So we need to actually be bridging that gap. With this progress comes a responsibility to actually make sure that women are equipped with the tools to facilitate the magnificent progress that's being made.
Yeah. And I think in a lot of the things you talk about, you're talking about the individual and being able to have choice and, being able to define the life that you want. In a kind of segue, but interesting, because obviously it can be a choice to go for things like Premier's Awards and being nominated for things like that. Can you tell us a bit about the process and how that all came about? Because what an incredible honour, and in terms of the work that people do and that women who are leading in this state do, you're a standout in the work that you've done. What was the process to get to that point, and how did that make you feel?
Yes, I was actually nominated by a close friend. And it came about because I've always been interested in the role of government and in the role of even corporate entities and how they're actually shaping my future. And I've always surrounded myself with, subscribing to that email and looking at that newsletter and all that sort of thing. I'm a bit of a nerd for that sort of stuff. But my friend actually saw that I liked something on Facebook about the Women New South Wales Awards and said, I saw that you liked this. Do you think you'd be willing to be nominated? And that's a very confronting question to be asked.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's often where women go, oh no, I'm not deserving, or I don't think I have the skills for this, or I'm not qualified for this.
Yeah, can you imagine, reading the criteria and trying to measure yourself against it and all the people you've met over your entire life, and you start thinking they would be far better. But it's actually not about that. I was able to take a step back and I said, look, if you would like to nominate me, that would be a great honour and privilege. And she did, and I had to provide her some information for that, which was very uncomfortable. But again, reframing it and going, this is a favour to her. If she wants to do this, and I'm going to let her do that. So as the process went on, I was shortlisted and I had to provide a bio, and then all of a sudden I was a finalist. It was the most surreal experience of my entire life, and I can say that hand on heart. And then to actually attend the awards, there were these women there that, we talked about reading the criteria. Now they're standing here in front of me, these women that I model myself on and that I aspire to be like, all in one room. And what was the most interesting thing about that room is that not a single woman there would have said that they deserved to be there. Yeah, right. They had the exact same internal dialogue that I had, that, someone else nominated me and it made me uncomfortable, but I'm here and I just, wanted to do them proud. Yeah. And I think that's a classic womanly trait of just being that self-effacing, I'm in service of others. And it was seriously the best day of my life, and I'm so extremely grateful to have been nominated, been a finalist, and to have attended the event.
And you should be incredibly proud, but also it's because you did great work and you've helped so many other young women in terms of this conversation, and you've overcome your own things in terms of, designing it and getting through that, and then really ushering it through for other people to do. So you should be incredibly proud of that, and you should absolutely own it. And then you should also read the book Untamed by Glennon Doyle. But we can come back to that. So I do want to touch on something that is the two questions that we always ask in this series to close things off. And the first one is, what is something that you would say to your younger self?
I would say ask people what they expect of you rather than assuming you know what they expect of you. And I'll give you a classic example. My Year 10 end of year exams, I assumed that my parents wanted me to get straight A's in those exams because they always said, oh, you want to study at the library? Absolutely, that should improve your marks for your exams. You should do that. We'll pick you up. They facilitated all of this ambition that I had, and I equated that with they want me to get perfect marks. Now, I did fairly well in those exams, but I did not get straight A's. And I felt so crushed, and that my parents wouldn't love me anymore. It was that traumatic. But I realised, I sat down with Mum and she said, you've done exceptionally well, and what I'm most proud of is your effort, that you chose to apply yourself to what you cared about, and it was that process. I don't care what the marks were. You didn't have to show me the marks and I'd still be proud of what you did. And I just think to myself, imagine if I'd had that conversation at the start of that process. I wonder how I would have approached it differently. Perhaps I still would have applied that same amount of effort, because I would have known that she expected me to apply myself to things that I cared about. But just that pressure of literally throughout the exam thinking I've got to get an extra mark so that make my parents proud. And that's the wrong way to approach things. So if I could go back and say, have the conversation early and just check yourself, because you're going to put yourself through a lot of emotional turmoil if you don't have an honest conversation.
It's interesting. The flip happened for me in year 12, because I got a mark that was 10 marks higher than what my mum thought I would get in my ATAR. So she was beside herself with joy. Yeah. And I remember being devastated at the time, and then having this conversation with my mum, and she was like, it was the same thing. It's the effort, the energy. I just wanted to see that. And I knew that you were so busy doing other things that maybe you wouldn't do that. So I'm really proud either way. The last question is, and I'm particularly excited about this because I feel like off camera, you and I both know that I'm privileged enough to have my lovely stepdaughter listening to this, and I'm very grateful for that, because I feel like there's so many lessons in it. But what is something that you would like to say to the children and young people of New South Wales?
Picture a forest with these amazing mature trees in it, and we can appreciate they provide shade, they provide fruit, they provide homes for animals. I think next to them, there are all of these smaller trees that basically look like twigs. They look like sticks, and they're growing, right? I spent so much of my childhood and my teen years being that twig and thinking I'm not good enough because I'm not one of those trees. But perhaps what I should have been focusing on was getting the right nutrients from the soil, getting enough water, getting enough sunlight, because I knew that if I did all those things and put those pieces in place, one day I was going to blossom into one of those trees. And I think that has happened over time. But I've just beaten myself up for so long about being the little twig. But what I didn't realize is that's actually the most important part of the entire process, is actually foster yourself at that stage. So I would say take care of your needs and what you need in order to become what you want to become. Give yourself the training and the love and the nutrition and everything that you need to grow into what you want to be. It's okay that you're not it right now, because there's time to get there, but just lay the foundations first.
It's an incredible privilege to do this series, because I'm always learning by the people who sit in that chair. But Julia, I think you've blown it out of the water in terms of, your own story and your journey and everything that you've done. And I cannot thank you enough for the foundation you've laid with a number of young women across New South Wales and young people around financial literacy. And I know that you will continue to grow, and whatever is the grandest tree that exists, I'm certain that will be you. And I'm so very grateful, and congratulations for your nomination and for being a finalist in the Women in New South Wales Awards.
Thank you so much, and it's been an absolute privilege and honour to be here and talk with you, Zoe. Thank you.
Thank you.